Nevertheless, John Adams had a vice president who hated him, and Jefferson had a president he didn't want to talk to, but that was the law at the time. Congressman Matthew Lyons, a small government Jeffersonian anti-federalist from Vermont, said that President Adams was more interested in pomp and circumstance than he was in the powers of the presidency. Now, all right, Adams went along with that. And then Congressman Lyons went a little too far, and he made fun of the president's waistline. And he referred to the President of the United States as his rotundity. And for that, Congressman Lyons was indicted, tried, and convicted of violating the Alien and Sedition Acts because he brought the presidency into disrepute by mocking his waistline. Now, if you're from Boston or New Jersey or Chicago or New Orleans, you'll appreciate the second part of this story. Congressman Adams' jail term began 2 months before Election Day. So he ran for re-election to the Congress from his jail cell in Massachusetts. And he won. He was re-elected. Look, we can kid around about the anomalies in history, about how a country that complained about a king suppressing speech acquired power and itself suppressed speech. Over 25 people spent a total of over 50 years, if you add up all their jail times together, in federal jails during the presidency of John Adams because of their speech. What about the First Amendment? It's pretty clear. The Congress overlooked it, and the courts overlooked it. That's why it's important that you understand what your rights and liberties are, because a government that doesn't like you, or worse yet, a government that hates you, or worse yet, a government that fears you, will overlook the natural rights that are yours and will not protect those rights, and you may just have to protect them yourself. This is a pattern that repeats over and over in our history. During the Civil War, whatever you think of the nobility of the Northern cause or the treacherous nature of the Northern cause, whichever side you're on, was it a war against slavery or was it a war for power? Was it a war against states' rights? Was it a war to collect tariffs from ports in the South? Whatever you think. Abraham Lincoln locked up 3,000 newspaper reporters, not soldiers shooting at him, but newspaper reporters in the North, because they criticized the war effort. And he argued that they were too dangerous to be set free, too dangerous to talk to lawyers, too dangerous to be brought before juries. Does any of this sound familiar? During World War I, the Congress enacted the Espionage Act. The Espionage Act made it a crime to try and talk someone out of supporting the war. A crime to talk. Ask Abe Gitlow, an immigrant from Eastern Europe, who went into the basement of a friend's repair shop and cobbled together, if you're my age, you remember this, one of those old-fashioned mimeograph machines. You remember those? It was a barrel with a stencil with ink on the inside. If you spinned it at the right speed and you put the paper in the right place, it would reproduce on the paper what you had cut on the stencil. So he cuts on the stencil, if you're drafted, don't go. The war is unlawful, resist it. And he takes these crudely printed documents and he hurls them off the roof of a tenement where he lives on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. Somebody gets it and gives it to the government, and he's prosecuted, tried, and convicted and sentenced to 20 years in jail for exercising his free speech. At the trial of Mr. Gitlow, the government couldn't find anybody who found or read or understood the pamphlets. He wrote them in Yiddish. That statute under which Gitlow was convicted is still on the books today. When the New York Times exposed that President Bush had authorized spying without warrants, whatever you think of that issue, my own views are well documented on it. The Bush administration threatened to prosecute the editors of the New York Times under this same Espionage Act. Why does the government assume that it has the power to interfere with liberties it has sworn to uphold. If the whole purpose of the American experiment is to demonstrate that we can pursue life, liberty, and happiness better on our own than by the central planning of the government, why does it seem that the government is always resisting us on this? Why does it seem the government is always trying to tell us how to live, trying to make these decisions for us? All right, there's a knock on your door. You answer the door. There's a guy with a gun. The guy says to you, "Give me your money. I want to give it away in your name." All right, what are you going to do? You call the police on this crackpot. It turns out he is the police. He's a federal agent come to collect your taxes and give the money away in your name. You just heard Glenn. Charity comes from the heart. The very root of the word for charity is the Latin word caritas, which means heart. It is impossible to be charitable with someone else's money. You can only be charitable when you give from your own. There are three ways to acquire wealth in this country. The first is by inheritance. Somebody leaves you a fortune. God bless you. Be generous with that fortune. That's the inheritance model. The second is the economic model. You trade a good, a service, an idea, a skill, the sweat of your brow for someone who's willing to pay you for it. This is what almost all of us use, and when the government doesn't interfere, we prosper with it. The third is the extortion model. Your money or your life. Which model does the government use? When I say on air, and I'll say it right here, taxation is theft. My friend John Stossel says to me, "Judge, you're killing me when you say that." I said, "What do you mean I'm killing you when I'm saying that? What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, my people are emailing me wanting to know why I won't say it." I said, "John, say it." Think of it. The government presumes that it can just take as much money as it wants from us. Well, whose money is it? If you own your body and you own the fruits of your labor, natural law, you own the ideas that come out of your body, you own what you trade, what your body does and what your mind thinks and what your words articulate, that property is yours. The government doesn't have a claim on it. But we've established a government in this country that thinks it can regulate any behavior, control any activity, and tax any event it wants. And it's about time we said to them, there's a line thou shalt not cross. It's the threshold of my house. One day I was interviewing Congressman Jim Clyburn, who's the number 3 ranking Democrat in the House, over health care. I got the health care debate, seems like it was 100 years ago. It was only a few months ago. And I said to him, Congressman Clyburn, can you tell me where in the Constitution the federal government is authorized to manage health care? And he said to me, Judge, most of what we do in Washington is not authorized by the Constitution. Can you tell me where health care is prohibited to us in the Constitution? So 2 very interesting responses. The first response is amazingly candid but deplorable, because they took an oath to uphold the Constitution, come what may. Whether it pinches or it comforts, they took an oath to uphold it. And for him to acknowledge that most of what they do is not authorized by the Constitution is a rejection of that oath. But to say, can you tell me where in the Constitution health care is prohibited to the federal government, turns on its head the whole concept of a limited government. The federal government did not come into existence in order to right every wrong. It came into existence only to address the 17 unique, specific, discrete, delegated powers given to it by the Constitution, and health care is not among them. I mean, think about what the federal government runs. The post office is broke. Amtrak is broke. Social Security is broke. Medicare is broke. Medicaid is broke. When the Mustang Ranch was taken over by the feds for failure to pay their taxes, they ran it into the ground. The federal government cannot provide booze and hookers to truckers in the desert, and they want to run health care. I mean, this is ridiculous, but it is a serious state of affairs when you think about it, that those we send to Washington do the opposite of what we send them for. I was on air with one of Glenn's and my more irascible, irritable colleagues, and we were going back and forth, and he said to me, you know, the Secretary of Homeland Security, Janet, what's her name? I know what you're thinking, and the answer is in capital letters, no. She issues some kind of a proclamation saying that people that think the government is too big, taxes are too high, life begins at conception, the right to keep and bear arms is a fundamental individual natural right, are dangerous to society. So I said to my more irritable, irascible colleague, well, she knows that I believe government is too big. She knows that I believe taxes are too high. She knows that I believe that life begins at the moment of conception. She knows that I believe that the right to keep and bear arms is a fundamental human, individual, natural right. But how does she know that anybody else believes it? And he looked at me and he said, well, I don't know. How does she know this? And I said, Bill? Because she can read your mail before you get it. She can go to your lawyer's office and look at the documents there without you knowing it. She can go to your doctor's office and look at your medical records without you getting a whiff of it. She can capture every keystroke on every computer you touch without even getting a search warrant. He looks at me and he goes, well, where did she get this power from? She got it from the Patriot Act, which you, Bill, supported when the administration that you liked was in power. And now they're gone, and she has this power, and she will use it on those she hates and fears. Remember this diabolic offer. The devil comes out from behind a tree, and he says, give me your freedom, and I will keep you safe.